Sometimes the most important decision a draft prospect can ever make is that decision that comes around at a certain time of whether or not it's time for them to declare for the NFL draft or they need to go back to college for another season. Sometimes guys make the right decision and stay. Sometimes guys make the right decision and leave. Sometimes they make the wrong decision and stay, or they make the wrong decision and leave. Well, this much I could tell you is that Devante Parker going back to school for his senior season in 2014 was the absolute right decision for him. Going back to Louisville took him from being what would have been maybe a second or third round draft position in that loaded 2014 wide receiver class to now being viewed as a top flight prospect and easily a first round pick, if not a top 15 pick in this 2015 NFL draft. And why did Devante Parker see such a big rise in his draft stock from last year to this year? Well, it's because of the skill sets that he has. This is a guy that has the height and length that you want out of a number one wide receiver, right around 6'3" with really long arms. He's pretty smooth in and out of his breaks and has that speed to get vertical, that speed to stretch out opposing defenses. What I also really like about Devante Parker is more than just that, though. Not only does he have the height and length you want, not only does he have the speed to get deep and the athleticism and the smoothness in and out of his breaks, but he's a guy that uses his body very well to go up and get that ball at its highest point. He has the ability to make the acrobatic, difficult, spectacular catch. He has a great ability to adjust to the balls, especially those that are off target. Can't tell you how many times, whether it was Teddy Bridgewater throwing in the ball or somebody else this past season at Louisville, I saw him be able to adjust to a ball and make a catch that a lot of other lesser receiving talents just wouldn't have been able to make. But it's more than just that. This is a guy with really good open field agility, really good vision as a runner as well, meaning that he's able to rack up the yak with his athleticism, with his vision, with his suddenness and his quickness. And he also has the ability to break a lot of tackles after the catch. For a guy that's not that particularly muscular or physical, he really breaks a lot of tackles. He's really a guy that surprises you with how many tackles he can break. A lot of that sure is due to his quickness, his acceleration, some of his suddenness, but he has some physicality to his game as well, which allows him to run through a lot of tackles, especially a lot of lower body arm tackles. So when I look at Devante Parker, I'm glad he came back to school for 2014 because it was the best decision he could possibly make because he really helped himself and he really improved as a prospect. And with that said, though, there are some things that concern me just a little bit about Devante Parker, and there are things that keep me from making him the number one wide receiver on my board in this 2015 NFL draft. First and foremost, I think he could be a little more decisive coming off of the line at the snap. He has a lot of wasted movement at the beginning. Sometimes he comes across, kind of haphazardly, and that's not exactly a great trait to have because that could really mess him up when it comes to the press coverage that he's going to face at the NFL level. More bump and run, more physical in his face press coverage. He has trouble already at the college level being able to get consistent separation on those shorter routes in smaller windows in particular. It's only going to bother him even more at the NFL level if he can't eliminate that wasted motion at the snap of the ball, if he can't get in and out of his breaks quicker in a shorter area. Like I said, in general, he is smooth in and out of his breaks, but that goes more so once you get 10, 15 yards and further down the field. The deeper you get with Devante Parker, I think the better he gets overall as a prospect. He needs to work on his effectiveness and his abilities in the short area. He's also a bit thin for his height. For being about 6'3", he is pretty skinny. I won't quite say rail thin, but he is a guy that could definitely benefit from being in an NFL strength and conditioning program. He needs to add 10 to maybe 15 pounds of muscle naturally on his body, enough to not sap his speed and quickness, which is what's getting him to the dance, but also enough size and bulk to be able to handle the pounding of the NFL level, to improve his ability to be more physical and be able to break through and get around and get off of that physical bump and run press coverage that he's going to see a lot more at the NFL level. I also have some concerns about Devante Parker, similar to Amari Cooper, who had previous foot and knee injuries. This is a Devante Parker who missed several games in the 2014 campaign for Louisville with a knee injury. Anytime you see a knee injury, that's a bit of a red flag for a wide receiver, especially when that wide receiver has a lot of his game based off of speed and quickness. And what's one of the first things that you lose with a knee injury potentially is speed and quickness. It was good to see Devante Parker come back in a big way coming off of that knee injury, but that's something that is going to have to be evaluated by the doctors at the combine throughout the draft process. You're going to have to look at Devante Parker's knee and make sure it's structurally sound, and having a knee injury before makes him more likely to maybe have one again, and again, that's a bit of a concern for me. But again, a lot to like about Devante Parker as an NFL prospect. When I look at him and I look at a good comparison for him at the NFL level, I look at somebody out of last year's wide receiver class, Jordan Matthews from Vanderbilt, who's now with the Philadelphia Eagles. Here's a guy that's a vertical threat that can surprise you with his speed. Similar to Jordan Matthews at Vanderbilt. People looked at him as a bigger wide receiver, being more physical of a guy than he was really as an athletic freak or a speedy guy. But here was a guy in Matthews that could get deep, could get over the top. He could make those spectacular plays. That's the same type of thing Devante Parker has to his game. He's faster than Jordan Matthews, quicker than Jordan Matthews, maybe not quite as physical, but has a similar ability to be able to go get the ball at its highest point and be able to adjust to the ball and make those really difficult catches, especially on the off-target throws. I really like the consistency of Devante Parker's hands. I think he uses his body really well to improve the overall size of his catch radius, if you will. And like I said, that ability to make special, spectacular plays and make them happen is a big reason why I'm so high on Devante Parker. When I look at him, I view him as the number 2 wide receiver in this 2015 NFL draft, a guy that I feel very safe about saying is going to be a very productive NFL wide receiver for the next 8 to 10 years. Will he be a number 1 wide receiver? More likely than not. I think in this particular draft, he's a borderline top 10 talent, and again, the second best wide receiver in this 2015 NFL draft class.